Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday Creators Talks. I am absolutely honored and privileged to be here with Heather, as always. Heather Workman is just such a phenomenal being. Um, and today we have two guests on our panel today, and we have Lee and Adam, and two amazing gentlemen that I know you guys are going to learn a lot from today. So make sure you guys have your questions ready. Make sure if you're watching live, let me know that you're here. Hashtag live, hashtag replay, all the things. And why don't we kick it off with you guys introducing yourselves? Heather, explain who the hell you are.
Hey, hi, gorgeous bleh, ooh, wow, that starts great.
Yes.
Hello, gorgeous beings. I am Heather Workman. I'm the owner and operator of Living Oracle Wellness. I am a shaman and oracle, all things energy. I help gorgeous individuals release their energetic attachment to trauma and life events so that they can be living their best lives.
I love it. I love it. And Lee, introduce yourself, please.
Well, hey there, I'm Lee Smart. I am a professional coach. I help people to lead a life that they can really be proud of, to really get fired up about life rather than going through the rat race and just going through the trap and the maze and burning themselves to a crisp. I also help a little bit with the health side of it, the energy side of it, and I really love it whenever I have clients that come to me and a client come to me recently said he sprang out of bed too fast and it pissed his wife off because he was so hyped up about tackling the day. So that's where my happiness lives, is to help other people get there.
I love it. I love it. And Adam, Mr. Adam Latton, please introduce yourself.
So I'm Adam Lattin, founder of The Clearest You. My focus is around both empowerment and communication. I believe in this new era, it's essential to teach other people how we need to be cherished, supported, valued, engaged with, celebrated, all those different things. And so I teach people the language and the ways they can create and deepen their communication with people that are receptive to them.
Love it. I love it.
So that is me.
I, you know, and I know, luckily, I know all these people. Um, and I could tell you that they're probably the best in the field right now.
Hey,
So,
Jeff, you need to introduce yourself
oh,
because,
I'm Jeff.
you know,
I'm Jeff. I'm your Freedom Jedi. I keep forgetting that people don't might not know who I am anymore. Um, and what I do is I help gay men just get rid of all the freaking drama and start actually living the life that they want. So, and those who love us, I don't work exclusively with gay men, but primarily with gay men at this point. Um, Today we are talking about success. And one of the things that I know about success is that a lot of it is coming from societal pressures. So what my first question is, what is your definition of success without societal pressures? And we're gonna start ladies first because she's pretty. And it's her birthday.
it is my birthday.
Later.
Day.
Thank
Happy
you. Thank
birthday.
you. Thank you. Wow. See that it's taken me a long time to get to this point. Success to me is just knowing that I get up every day and do what I love, and I get to connect with people who are at a place where they're ready to heal and leave behind all of that stuff that no longer serves them. So success to me is watching other people blossom in their healing journey into who they want to, who who's underneath there that they've covered up for so long.
I got it.
Yeah, it's not about money, it's not about status, it's not about any of those things for me.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is that it's really about the impact that you get to make
Yeah,
with people. And I
yeah.
agree. mine is very much around impact too. Lee, I'm going in the clockwise order, so if you guys just kind of get me ready, it makes it easier on my screen, makes it easier in my head.
Works for me, bud. So success, we talk about, for me, it started off like I thought money was going to set me free. And I ended up, I was making $40,000 a week and was miserable. I burned myself to a crisp. I worked myself into a hospital bed. And from that hospital bed, all I can think about was I want to create badass memories with my kids. That's it. That's all I can think about. And I realized in that moment, the only people that would remember that I kept on working late were them. Nobody else would. So from that point, I went and I thought that money wasn't necessary. And I went a completely different opposite way. And I was just trying to create awesome experiences and awesome experiences. Well, find out if you don't have money, you can't do the things you want to do. So money's a part of it, but money isn't going to buy happiness, but the lack of it will cause misery. So money is a part of it, but time is a part of it, right? It's to have the time to do what you want to do, and to go experience life. That's part of it. Being fired up, to me, success is you're so fired up about getting out of bed that you just get up and go, right? And you create an impact for people and helping people. Like, to me, the real true success is bringing as many people along with me as I can. I want to do as much cool shit with cool people as I possibly can. That is success. This argument of, is it the destination or is it the journey? I think it's honestly, truthfully, it's more about the company. What company you're bringing with you. So that's success.
I can get on board with that.
Yeah. Yeah, Steph says absolutely money is energy like everything else. Yeah.
Miss Stephanie, she is going to be on one of these shows very, very soon. She normally cooks during this time. She's a chef and absolutely phenomenal person. If you don't know her, make sure you get to know her. She will help you so much in your health journey.
Healthy chef Steph.
Healthy chef Steph. Absolutely. Adam, what is your definition of success outside societal pressures?
I think it's validating your value system. Whatever your personal value system is, whether it's in line with societal pressures or not, I think it's being able to recognize what you actually and accurately value and being able to promote growth in those areas. Even if it's money and status, which it definitely is for some people, it's essential for them that they have money and status. That's the only way they're going to be in balance and engaged. So I think that whatever your value system is, whether it's money, adding value, any inspiration, exploration, discovery, whatever it is that you connect to. And I think that success really needs to be defined individually and personally. And we need to be able to let people have whatever their unique value system is. And I think we really get caught up in trying to convince other people that we care about and love that success isn't where they think it is when it really is for them. And so we have to learn to step out of the way and say, if that is success for you, go here. This is success for me. If you're not going to support me in these specific ways, please get out of the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's very individual, and I think that I'm never gonna be the corner office kind of guy, right? I'm never gonna want the corner office and making sure and being in the corporation and all that kind of good stuff. It's not what's going to light me on fire. And there was a time when I thought it would be. So what I found is that when when I went into the RV, which, trust me when I tell you, it took me 5 years to do because it's so not who I was. I still can't make a proper fire. People laugh at me all the time. Um, I am the last person in the world you would think should be on a campground. I got it, right? But I find peace and tranquility and love when I'm out on the road, and really being able to impact other people is it for me. You know, the impact and showing people that they can live how they want to live. It's not about money. It's not about time. It's really about making the decision.
Yeah, I spent years and years, I worked almost 25 years in the medical field. And people always said to me, and it took me a really long time to feel successful. And I was working in colleges teaching individuals how to assist the doctor. I was about as successful as you could be doing what I do. And I didn't feel that way because someone was always telling me, well, why aren't you an office manager? Right. If I was working in the office, like, why aren't you running the office? Which is not what I wanted to do, by the way. And then when I was at the college level teaching, and they would say there would be an opening for a department chair or something like that. Well, don't you want to run the program? Like, you would be really good at that. Why aren't you running the program? And I'm like, because I don't want to. Like, I'm really good at what I do. And I like the interaction. I like being the mentor. I and I had to take a step back afterwards because I was super sick by the time I quit working and started doing what I do and creating what I've created. And but I had to go, I want to do it on my own terms, right? Because like I don't do politics well. I don't like people telling me how to connect with other people. You can mentor them and I want you to know everything about them, but you can't say too much about yourself. And that's no thanks. No thanks. But I had to take a step back later and go, I was really successful at that. And I'm really successful at whatever I do because I am really good at whatever I set my mind to do.
Yeah, you are,
Yeah,
and luckily I get to walk with your journey, and so I get to see how successful you really are.
thank you.
So remind you, Lee. You know, when you're talking about success, I think that how would you suggest that somebody start looking at what success looks like for them?
The first thing that comes to mind is your success impendent upon the future? Like, really take a look at, are you consistently looking at, once I get here, I'll finally be successful. Once I get that body, I'll finally be successful. Once I get this amount of dollars in the bank, I'll finally be successful. This and that and this and that. Once I finally get to Friday, then I get to party and whatever it is, right? And if your success always lies in the future, it will always stay in the future. Success only happens right now. And there's a few different things that we can look for that if something feels off, if I say fulfillment, like why are you not fulfilled? It's kind of vague. But if we really look at what are you looking for to create more fulfillment in your life, to create more success, we can almost dial it down to 4 things. Freedom, like, do you feel trapped or are you able to do the things that you want to do? And then there's peace. Is your world in turmoil? Is it in chaos? Or do you have a little bit of sense of order about your goings on? Then there's going to be a sense of aliveness, a sense of excitement, a sense of float. Are you getting into that state of to where you're doing the things that really fucking turn you on, that you kind of lose yourself in doing these things and just completely lose all sense of time? And then the very last one is going to be, do you have a sense of connection and love in your life, and a sense of community and people that get you for who you are, and you can be who you are with these people without fear of them rejecting you? those four things. So if you're somewhere, if something's off, typically it's going to be one of those four things that'll be off, and you start to look into one of them, because success constantly moves, right? Whenever you focus on one thing, by that very nature, you're not focusing on something else. And if you're not focusing on that, it naturally just kind of falls away. So then you go focus, and it's just a constant balancing act always.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, that's great. Steph says, wow, freedom, peace, elated excitement, and love are what I write every day with my I am. Yeah.
Right on.
that's awesome. Adam, what do you guys say?
What was the question?
Where do you, if you were looking with a, if you were working with a client, let's say, and you were looking at success and trying to help them discover what success looks like to them, where would you start?
I would actually start by going back and helping them acknowledge their previous successes. Because in most cases, there's not even awareness in that individual that they've already previously experienced success. And with my gift, I'm often able to list for them specific examples of when they've previously succeeded. And so I actually think it's important to be able to stop and smell the roses as a way of connecting with success, to realize that it's not actually been something that's as far away from them as they thought it was, that they just don't actually engage in acknowledging success when they've achieved it. Teaching them where their power actually lies, in my opinion, really helps them engage in success. I remind them, oftentimes I'm drawn to remind a particular client about a specific age when they felt powerless, and how would that person have acknowledged the areas where they've gained power. So that's, whatever that looks like for that individual, is kind of where I focus. But I think that success happens much more frequently, but we're taught to rush through so much that we don't actually step back and engage with where we've succeeded. So we don't even know it and analyze it while it's already happened. And so when we can go back and become filled with success, it becomes easier to see as we're moving forward through life and through our future.
Love it. Love it. Where do you guys, so what comes up for me is, where do you feel like us being told that we should be modest, and how a lot of times the modesty thing happens, and not be a braggart? It's such a weird word I don't use in my normal life. As I said, I'm like, is that the right word? And I'm like, yes, it is. Um,
Oh,
so how does that
I
filter
think
in?
it's I think it's all in about how you do it. Like when you're celebrating your success, or an accomplishment you've done, or something that you're proud of, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, and we should do that. Now, if you are rubbing it in someone else's face that you have done something better than them, now you're coming from a place of ego, and right, like, I did this and you didn't do that, type of thing. I think um, that's where it's coming from, ego, and that's not okay. But being proud of who you are, and being proud of what you've done and you've accomplished, and being able to share that with someone should always be okay. Always be okay. Because I don't think we celebrate enough. We talk about our pitfalls and things that are, that we failed at. With failure is just a lesson, right? Of how not to do something. You're just learning that that didn't work for you and to do it differently. But, I think we get so caught up in that we don't acknowledge enough of the incredible things that we do accomplish, and should take pride in what we do. You should be very prideful in who you are.
I totally agree with what you just said. Uh, celebration is such a fantastic way to not only continue to win, but you build that success and you get your entire neurotransmitter and hormone system on your side. And now you're just craving to keep on succeeding, succeeding. What I love though is whenever somebody who's never bragged on themselves and really celebrated, whenever they start to having that confidence to do it, feels like arrogance. So then they just, oh, this is so comfortable. I can't brag on myself. And then just keep on doing it. As long as you're not stepping on somebody else, which is as long as you're not stepping on somebody else, feel free to say, I absolutely rocked it.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think that, and I'm not skipping you, Adam, by any means, but I think it's really funny because I'm from Detroit, right? And the Lions have been so friggin' bad for so many years, right? And honestly, they're a joke. And I'm not a sports person. I'm probably the last person to talk about sports, but I hear, especially because they've been such a joke. And so they started winning, and it's like, okay, they're starting to win. All right, interesting. Beginning of the season, and now they're like in the playoffs. And our former quarterback was on the LA Rams that we just beat, and so he's in town, and just being able to like give one of the things I really loved about him is that everyone that they interviewed did it said how great they were, how great Matt was. The opponent was on both sides. Both of them were just like all praise for each other, and we won. You know what I mean? It was like, and we won, and they won, whichever side you heard it from. Matt played with us. Stafford played with us for years, and would love to be right here, right? So I just thought it just was what came up because this week was like really that was very prevalent in Detroit. That and I've talked about sports more this week than I probably have in the last like 6 months. But being able to actually acknowledge your accomplishment without saying how someone else did poor. Especially in that kind of game where it really was, I won, you lost. You know what I mean? You can even see my hands in the middle of this. Is kind of funny. So, Adam, what are your thoughts?
So I think that it really is important to communicate how good you are, but it's also equally important sometimes to communicate you are better than other people. Because the challenge that we have is that we need to protect other people from toxic practitioners. So I think it's even more important to communicate and express. And if you're coming at a place of protection or redirection, I think it is important to say you're better than so and so, or be careful of that person because of this, or engaging in like recognizing I have more skill and mastery, don't go to that person. I think it's actually really important to be able to say that and do that. But I also think that we have to realize we're living in a completely different era when prideful. Once upon a time, people had enough time to observe, see, and know who every person they interacted with was. And nowadays, we just can't know everyone we come into contact with. So if someone wants to be known, they have to be even louder than the noise around that person to be able to get their attention. Everyone's walking around with a certain level of noise around them. And so if you really want to get someone's attention, a lot of cases, you have to be louder and clearer about who you are and what your value is than other people. You have to make a conscientious effort to give people the opportunity to know you.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. When I was saying above someone, I meant like, there's a difference between saying I am more qualified than that person. That's not coming from a place of ego. I was talking about like, what's a good way to put this? because we are above people. Spiritual, even in the spiritual, you know, community, and like, you get to a point where you are above consciously than other people. Like, that is our society. Of course that is. I was more talking about it coming from a place of ego where it's mean and nasty, and it does not have to be.
No, and I completely hear you, but
Yeah.
I from my perspective of the clients I work with, I find very few people work with me or that I interact with or that are looking to grow have that level of cruelty in them. Most
Very
people I
true.
engage with that are looking to grow are really need to just be louder no matter what. Even if they're perceiving that they're making someone else smaller, if it's not from a place of cruelty, if it's from a place of expression and accuracy, I think it's really important. And I think it's important that people be able to, I a while ago I heard somebody talk about the fact that the best writers aren't the writers that we see the most of. The writers we see the most of are the ones that were able to be presented in such a way that either they themselves or other people spoke up for them.
Right.
It's not always based on skill, and I wish it was more often based on skill. But in a lot of cases, it's based on other things. But that it's really important to teach people to have a louder, clearer, and more specific voice.
I noticed that in my first business that there would be other businesses just like mine. I ran a mechanic shop, and there would be other mechanic shops that had a parking lot full of vehicles all the time. And that's exactly that. They would bring their vehicles back to me after they were screwed up without fail. I mean, it would happen. So that's when I realized that just because you're really great at something doesn't mean you're going to get more of it. It's who's going to speak about it, who's going to talk about it. So you do have to be the great technician. You have to be the great at what you do, but you also have to speak about it too. You have to present it in a way that people can hear about it. Because if you have somebody in an apartment building with a doctor and has a heart attack, but doesn't know the doctor's in that apartment building, then they're just shit out of luck.
Yeah.
But you can also ask other people to speak for you. It doesn't always have to be you.
Yep.
For those people that have a harder time finding their voice, sometimes they need to borrow someone else's, and that can work as well. But we have to have some voice that's louder for us, or our own voice louder for us.
Yeah, I am much better at promoting other people than I am me.
Yeah.
Look at my timeline. If you don't believe that, look at my timeline. I'm
I
constantly
mean, I
promoting.
just got comfortable with saying, like, what I do, no one else does, because I created the program from scratch. I didn't take someone else's course and then adapt it around. Like, I literally created everything that I do. And no one heals like I heal, because I don't need it. I didn't need to go to become a Reiki master and do all the things that other people have to do to hone in on their skills. I just do it, and I come from a higher source than that. And it took me a long time to be able to say that with confidence and not feel like I had to go study with shamans for years and years. I've been doing those same things for years and years already. Things like that, where people would come and ask me, and then I would clam up and be like, and now I'm like, no, I just do it. I don't need all of that. Which is funny, because my spiritual advisor even, like, you blow me away. It's like, okay, well, he has worked really hard to do all those things. And yeah, it does. And it feels good to be able to do those things as well, right? To be able to say that about yourself.
And I know that a lot of times it's a challenge. It's a challenge to be able to step up and say that you know for a fact that about 3 weeks ago, I was in a whole crisis because things weren't working the way I wanted them to. Things were, in this whole thing, and so I had a lot of imposter syndrome going on. So I did what I did what I was taught to do, and I think is a really great idea to do, and that's to reach out and say, "This is what I'm feeling, and it's not who I am. It's what I'm feeling at this moment is some imposter syndrome," and then stop. You know what I mean? And let someone else say something. What I know Heather was part of that whole journey, so I'm gonna skip her for this one. What do you talk to be because it's like I could say exactly what you did, so I can't. Like, so, guys, what do you think about imposter syndrome? Where does it come from, and what is it that how do does that keep you from your success?
Who's first?
Pick it.
Well, Steph says imposter syndrome sucks, and I think the higher and bigger you play, the more you feel it.
So I think imposter syndrome comes from the idea, an overdeveloped idea of what mastery should feel like. I think that we believe if we have mastered something, we are somehow so adept at it that there's nothing left except for the width and breadth of all knowledge is ridiculous to believe that we can have it. When I think of mastery, I think of a highly developed student of whatever art we're talking about. It's actually more that you have clarity around the lanes and areas that you want to engage with. And again, it's something as simple as I've done this a certain number of times. I like the idea of I've done this 10,000 times. Okay. That whether you've done it perfectly or imperfectly, if you've done something 10,000 times, you've learned and you've grown and you know more than someone who's done it 100 times. And so that's inherently mastery. You know it better than somebody that's done it 100 times. In almost all cases. I mean, occasionally there are outliers. But I think that, again, it's this idea that we should have permanent surety. Like there is so much idea that we should have permanent clarity, that information is static and it doesn't change. And these ideas really play against owning the idea of, look, I'm a master communicator. I know it. I don't have any disagreement about it. There's someone else that is a better communicator than me? Sure, absolutely. But I am still a master of it, and I don't have any problem owning that anymore, because I know that I am definitely further away from the basic or average level of communicators. I have more capacity to articulate in English anyway than a lot of other people. I know more words. I have a wider breadth of vocabulary. I pay more attention. I listen. I engage in different ways. I know how to ask better questions. I'm a master communicator. I know that I don't suffer with the same level of imposter syndrome around communication that I do other areas of my life. I definitely have struggles in other areas, but that's because I inherently know that I'm weaker in other areas. But I only got to lose imposter syndrome by putting myself out there to be effectively validated. And most people they're not taught seek validation. Have people teach you where you engage. And I think that is what keeps a grip on imposter syndrome more than anything else. That we inherently need external validation because externally we were made to feel small. So if something is damaged externally, it has to be healed externally, in my opinion. I know that there are a lot of different paths, But I have found the greatest success by recognizing as a wound happens is how it needs to be healed. And other
Well, because
people,
you have to be open to receive that as well, right? Because that's part of it is when you're open to receiving that validation from someone, right?
no,
Because
I don't. I think that because equally we aren't open to receiving the negative validation when we experience it, we don't need to be open to receiving the positive validation. It still has impact. Regardless of whether or not we're open to receiving it, it can still have impact.
okay,
It can still have impact whether someone's open to it or not, especially because there may come a point later on where they become open to it and it hits later on. So even offering it,
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Okay,
Sometimes it's just planting seeds, and hopefully those seeds
right,
get watered and fertilized, and eventually they'll sprout and grow.
right.
that's the hope. Not always, but that's the hope.
Hopefully the soil is fertile and it'll take. I love what you said about the what's reflected back to you is so important, because the things that we're really good at end up looking mundane to us because it's every day. This is what we do
Right,
all the time. So it feels like everyday stuff. It feels just normal. And then other people look at what we do and they go, "Holy crap, what'd you just do?"
right.
Well, I just did what I do. That, no big deal, right? It was just not a big deal at all. And so then you just keep getting that reflection back and getting that reflection back. It's like, hey, what you just did was absolutely phenomenal. No, it wasn't. That's
Yes,
just
it was.
right. So
Yeah,
hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm just
So,
yeah,
me. I don't know how many times I've said that. I think
yeah.
that's where I talk about like being open to receiving it is
Uh-huh.
when you can really feel and accept it when it comes in, right? Because it is important to hear it. And then there is a level where you are open to receiving that. And then it's like, oh, okay, it hits differently when you're open to receiving it.
oh, I completely agree. It definitely hits differently. But
Yeah.
I had to be told thousands of times I'm good at what I do before I was able to own it. And I
Yeah,
had to
that's
actively
rewiring the
reject it.
pathway. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
So like,
that's that over and over again of rewiring that
yeah,
pathway of I'm doing good instead of, the negative side.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's and it's a challenge,
Yeah.
right? It's a challenge to rewire that and to put that groove in, because once you hear it once and it's like, okay, it's kind of like going back and driving up into a dirt road, right? You have that one little rut, you have that one little thing, and then the next time there's another little rut, and there's another little rut, and then finally it kind of has a nice little groove in there that your car's not going to work if you move it out of it. But so many times we don't allow ourselves to actually accept that, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges is to be able to accept that. Yeah, you're pretty good at that. And I know one of the areas in my life that shows up a lot is graphic design. I've done graphic design since the '90s, guys, and so it's such a I don't want to do it for a living, because as soon as I start having to do it for a living, it drives me absolutely crazy. I hate people. Um, I start hating my clients. It's not a good thing. Not pretty. So, um, and I get very sensitive. And I know this about me. But when I do one-off stuff here and there, and I could do a graphic in about 15 minutes with Canva. Typically, about 15 minutes for a really decent design. And other people go in and they're like sitting there for like 3 hours and they're like, um, what have you? And I know that for me, I have a little piece, my exhaust manifold, there's a bolt missing, which I know Lee is gonna like look at me and go, it's a bolt. I know it's a bolt. It's right there. I know where it's at. I can actually point to it, right? But I can't put that. I know that if I try to put that bolt in, it's gonna fall out. I have full confidence in this because in my experience, that's what happens when I try to fix something. that Lee will sit there and it'll take me 2 hours to actually get that bolt to go in. I'll have to fight with it. It's gotta do the and Lee will do something like stupid, like, jack up the motor. I don't know what the hell he'll do. And it would just go right in and it's like, "Oh, here, and it's done." So you have to understand that things that you do inherently have knowledge that other people don't have. You inherently have a value that's different. We're all here as individuals. So the last question I want to kind of bring out there is what is the biggest obstacle you think for people actually being feeling successful? That's the word I want to use. Feeling successful. What's that biggest obstacle?
Trying to live up to other people's expectations or what they think society expects them to do.
It's not
Some of it's not being grateful for what you already have.
yeah.
That's a piece of it. There's more to it than that. That's a very, very complicated question you just asked. That's deep, but a big, big part of it. I know every time I would reach my goals, I would feel unwhole. And I just didn't set my goal big enough. So then I'd keep going. And I'd keep making the same goals again and again. And every time I would reach them, it's like, oh, well, I still hadn't made it. So I guess I'll keep going. So being aware of, of our successes and celebrating them and having gratitude, and knowing that, it's not a struggle for survival like it used to be. We make up things to struggle against now that we don't have to struggle against. It's amazing how we're programmed as animals to survive, and when we finally let that go, that no, I'm okay and I'm gonna be okay, and just have some faith and jump into what it is that really lights you up in life. That is success, is to trust your gut and dive headfirst into whatever it is that your passion is. Once again, here comes again. As long as you're not stepping on somebody else to get there. If you're going and you're going for it and you're bringing people with you, fucking A, let's do this thing.
Mhm. I think that's a big part of it for me is that you need to be bringing people with you.
Yeah.
I'm so absolutely lucky in the amazing people that are around me. Like every day for the last 2 weeks, I have said how amazing people somebody is around me. Like I've literally, like specifically, been able to say, "Oh my goodness, this person's amazing. Oh my goodness, this person is amazing." I just talked to Lee the other day, and I got off the phone and told Heather, "Lee was amazing. He's gonna be with us on Tuesday." You know, it was Stephanie yesterday. If you haven't seen that, the Creative Nomad show yesterday with Stephanie, she's amazing. Adam has done the Creative Nomad show also, and Adam is one of the people that I love dearly. And a lot of times we disagree, which is kind of fun because we have different definitions for a few of the things that are at the core of my being differences. So
Yep.
it's kind of fun because okay, and that doesn't make him it doesn't make me or him better or worse or whatever. We just have two different ways of going about helping somebody. And we come at it from two different areas. So I really, really love it. Um, and I didn't mean to cut you off. I am not trying to cut off Adam. So really, we might not always agree, but I promise you, I'm not kind of like trying to silence him at all. I want to I want to put him here.
I know when mutual respect exists and when it doesn't.
Right.
So I'm not worried about it.
I would hope so.
What I would say in answer to the earlier question 100%, the biggest hurdle to success is isolation on multiple different levels. Okay. I believe that the first level is lack of mentorship. We really have an absence of mentorship in this country. And honestly, if you even look at the animal kingdom, there's mentorship everywhere. We know that as beings, we need teachers to teach us how to be. And we need to be able to align with mentors. So that's one level of not feeling successful that's created by isolation. Another is trying to do everything ourselves. Hyper self-reliance is, in my opinion, unbelievably toxic. When we think that we succeed better when we do things by ourselves, it's just a mess. There are very few people that do things better with themselves than with the right team. Now, I agree, doing it by yourself is better than with a bad team, but you eventually need to be able to get to a point where you're only doing those pieces you're supposed to do for yourself. There is so much we are not supposed to invest in, so we have the resources to invest in more of what we're supposed to create individually. That's a huge thing, because time is definitely our biggest limiter more than anything else on the planet. Time is our biggest limiter to every single human. So I focus on that, and having a team impacts your time greatly, or lack of a team impacts your time greatly. Third, it still is in my opinion, the piece, validation is necessary, because we're so busy creating, we're not going to see. And we're not going to. The expectation that we're going to be able to see it all, see what we're creating when we're so busy being in motion, in my opinion, is just ridiculous. So for me, it's, if you can start effectively discerning who is worthy of your focus and not, that is the greatest gift you can give yourself towards success, is learning how to accurately identify who is a good match for you and who isn't, without feeling like the rejection of someone is destructive to their spirit. Most times, rejecting people when they're not a match to you is extremely healing, because it gives them permission to do the same thing. And people need permission. So many people need permission.
And it doesn't always have to be this big, huge breakup.
Right.
There's
I agree.
A lot of times, if they are that kind of toxic, where you need to separate them from them, typically speaking, you just stop messaging. You know what I mean? Or stop calling. And
Yep.
almost always, it's you that's continuing that relationship. Almost always. Not always, but almost always. You're the one that's perpetuating the relationship. You're the one, if you look, you instigated that conversation. You instigated that relationship. And when you stop and see where they fall in, right? It's like, okay, I didn't have to like do this big huge I hate you, and I just don't have to, and it's not and I'm not saying to play the game. I'll see when he calls, right? What I'm saying is, okay, I don't necessarily need to call you. I don't necessarily need that.
Chasing people's understanding is so unbelievably common. You want someone to understand, I invested so much in you. I want and need your understanding. I supported you so much. I need to be there when you wake up. Otherwise, all of that energy is wasted. All these other thoughts and ideas that go on to, one of the ways I acknowledge my success is I ask myself, was I a good opportunity rather than was I a good result? I am a phenomenal opportunity. I'm never any sort of result, but I'm a phenomenal opportunity.
I want to summarize the last couple of minutes. I want to go all the way back to being a do-it-yourselfer. The problem with being a do-it-yourselfer is you have to do everything yourself, which now it's all on you. That's a lot of responsibility to take on. But then there's nothing more valuable than having a friend that's will call you on your bullshit. And then one of the most powerful skills a person can have in their life is to be able to tell somebody to fuck off in a way that not only they hear it, but they thank you for the way you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's too much
That
work
friend
for me.
Jeff looked at me as soon as you said a friend that will tell you.
She knew exactly what I was thinking. Well, what's great is this
I'm
show.
that friend. I'm the friend that will
She
be
is
like,
that.
"Hey,
She is
you're
that friend.
fucking up." Like, you
And
know.
one of the great things
Yeah,
is
I'm that
that
friend.
this show originally, like I asked her back 8 months ago, 9 months ago, um, about this show. I had a thought about the show, um, and I kind of want to do this. This is kind of the format I wanted. This is kind of what I was thinking, and I'm kind of, and she's like, maybe, maybe, and so I kind of floated around a couple other people too, right? Because I wasn't sure if I was going to stay very gay focused. For a while there, it kind of was maybe that was going to be the way, and then I realized that that's not necessarily what I want to do. Um, I didn't want that kind of necessarily laser focus because I interact with a lot of different people, right? And it's funny because I think I've said gay more in the past month than I have in the past 2 years. Honestly, it's really a challenge for me sometimes, right? Not that I've ever hid anything or try to hide anything, but it's still a challenge. But Heather is the reason why this show actually exists the way in this format is because Heather finally said, literally, I was starting on graphics at that point. Like we were doing the show, and she goes, "Do you really want me to be on that?" And I'm like, I've only asked you every week at least for like 6 months, and she finally said yes.
Well, because Eddie kept going, "Well, I want you to be like a regular," and so and I'm a little neurospicy, so you have to be if you want something, you have to be very direct, and I'm very direct about what I want, and so he just kept like hinting, "Well, I want you to be at least a guest, like a regular," and finally I go, "Do you want me to co-host with you?" And he goes, "Yes, yes, I do." I was like, "Okay, I can do that. We can make that happen."
And what's great about Heather being here is that I end up being I clam up. I s- like I'm socially awkward a lot of times, so she gets to fill in, and it's great. So I love it, and I love you know it's funny the three of us are the three guys are all part of the master Unleash You Mastermind. So it's kind of weird that as we talk about community and things like that, I mean, this show wouldn't have happened. This show, particular part edition of this show, would not have happened if we weren't part of a community.
Which is something that I'm still like, I have done the lone thing where I got so much bad advice and all the people that I'm like, I have to figure out my way and what I'm comfortable with before I bring that team on, before I allow people in and stuff like that. Because when I first started, I had so many different people telling me so many different ways that I'm like, ew, that just feels gross to me. And so I just built a lot by myself.
I was saying that's so important. There is more than one way to skin a cat. You've got to find your way.
Yeah. And then now I have people around me that I trust, and I, my dad used to say all the time, my dad was not a handyman. He goes, there's a reason, like, he didn't work on cars, he didn't any of those things. And he goes, there's a reason why we have mechanics. There's a reason why we have business managers. There's a reason why we have tech guys. There's a reason, like, we don't need to do it all of ourselves. I always say, I know where all of my fluids go, and I know how to change a tire. Do I change my own tire? No, I do not. Why? Because I know someone who will come and change my tire for me. And just because I know how to do it doesn't mean I have to do it myself.
Mhm.
I had, in order to get my license, it was my dad growing up was a mechanic. So, in order for me to get my license, the rule was I had to do an oil change, a tune up, and change a tire and rotate the tires. Okay. To this day, I've done one oil change, one tune up, and I I've done a few tires, but I tend to not do them because I found that I can't get a tire off. So I end up jumping on the Foursquare, and it just I broke them. So I I have somebody that has power tools that I never end up having. But and that's what it is. You have to have the people around you. Now, everyone in my
Yeah.
family are mechanics. It didn't work very well for me this summer, but everyone around me is mechanics, and I just have people around that can do some of the things that I really can't, and some of the things, and then sometimes I use that as an excuse. So that's the other side of that. Are you using it as an excuse because I might not be great at it?
Is it
You don't have
really
to be
an
great at
excuse?
everything. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is it really an excuse? Like, I think that people use that word to attack themselves way too much. People don't acknowledge exhaustion, whether it's mental, spiritual, physical, whatever it is. They're saying, well, I'm somehow without the energy and I'm now making an excuse. Whereas inherently, I believe that, especially people that are typically proactive when they're not doing something, it really is because authentically they have nothing left and they're not acknowledging it.
Yeah.
I don't, I do not like hearing people say, I'm just making excuses. Sorry, I don't like people saying, I'm just making excuses, and I hate it when someone else turns to someone and say, you're just making an excuse. You do not fully know everything about someone else's life to be able to use that and say that to another person. Saying someone's lazy, saying someone's making an excuse, saying someone's playing the victim are one of the easiest ways for me to get infuriated, because most people don't acknowledge their own authentic real limits. I find very few people, if they had the resources they needed, would not be creating. It's more of a lack of whatever resource they need, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, external, whatever type of energy. They need more help than they're getting, or they just may not be able to create and do certain things, regardless of how much they may want to.
Are you trying to say shame doesn't work?
Yeah, I'm trying to say shame does not work. Shaming ourselves does not work. Shaming others does not work. It does not actually have an authentic, accurate impact. It's a
And
method and technique we were taught
Oh yeah.
that has completely gone with, maybe decades ago. There was some intrinsic value in it, but not anymore.
I think that there's
I'm with you 100%. Yes. And I think a lot of people haven't pushed themselves hard enough to know where their limits actually are.
I
So-
disagree. I think that most people need the space and time to grow by resting first, to not push their limits. It's essential that, because that's what I do with my clients all the time. I teach them how to redirect, so they're leaving their limits be to be able to go and create something else that has more, that gains them power that potentially will then allow them to come back to it. But that pushing a limit is one of the most toxic things you can do. And I have had tremendous amount of success working with the clients that I've worked with using those systems. I think that that's what we're taught, and we make it a truth for everyone, and it's just not true for everyone. Are there potentially some people that's true of? Sure, absolutely, but it's not a universal thing by any stretch. It causes tremendous damage to people because it creates shame cycles, horrible shame cycles, when you're trying to get someone to push their limits.
I
Awful.
think that it depends on what limit you're talking about. Okay, so I'm never gonna be a basketball player. Wanna know why? I'm 5'6". I don't. The only place I believe that you should ever have to run is to the bathroom, and I have the hand-eye coordination of a 2-year-old half the time, right? So I'm just not. It's just not gonna be something. Now, could I be a basketball player if I wanted? If I really, really wanted to be, I could. Like I could go and practice, and I could do it.
What about all the other necessary, important, valuable things in your life that you
Right.
wouldn't be able to do as a result of that?
So that's not a
I don't
choice I
think
would
that's
make.
an accurate. I don't think that's an accurate concept. I know people push that all the time, but I think that's just utterly unrealistic and ridiculous. I think that I teach people to succeed by honoring and celebrating their limits, and that is how they succeed. By acknowledging something's a limit, making it a closed door, potentially never touching it again.
So it would be different if I was shaming myself that I can't be a basketball player, right? So I'll show you how it actually worked in my real life recently. So for 2 months, I was waiting for a couple. The walls were separated from my overhead for 2 months. Okay, and my brother was supposed to do it, finish it, do it. Okay, and really, what had to happen is there had to be 6 holes drilled and the bolts put in. Okay, I had already bought the bolts. I'd already all the stuff was there. Okay, all I had to really do was drill 6 holes. And the reason why I'm not in quartzsite right now in the warm is because I didn't drill 6 holes. Now, can I drill 6 holes? And what my story is, and what my is that I'm not good at tools, and things fall off when I do try these things. And I know that's not always true because I hung this door. I've done other things. So I think that the fine line that happens there, and I'm not saying that you're wrong at all, because there are, like I said, if I was trying to judge myself on being a basketball player, that's ridiculous, right?
But
Because
you're talking about a limiting belief.
right,
He's talking about limits, period, and you're talking about a limiting belief.
because I think
You
that
have a
most
limiting belief on, and you don't have to be a the other side of that is you don't have to be a handyman.
right, I
You
don't
could
have to
still
be
push yourself to, if you wanted to learn to drill holes, go buy a piece of wood and drill as many holes as you want until you got a straight hole.
right.
You're capable of doing it.
It,
You
it
know what I
exactly.
mean?
And
Yeah.
so when I realized that I was capable, so what ended up happening, how I got to where I am now, right? Because I did leave, is that I finally said I'm leaving this day. I am going to do this. If I have to do it, I have to do it. Though I can physically drill a hole. I even have the tool. Like it wasn't even, like I have a drill. It's the only power tool I own is a drill, because I found that it's so much easier to do a whole lot of things with the drill, not having a drill, right? So it's the only power tool I have. So, and everything was already cut. Like I had no excuse at that point. And when I realized that the excuse I was using wasn't was a limiting belief and not an actual limit. And I think that
That's it,
most
man.
people allow their limiting beliefs to become their limits.
I've pushed too many people in the gym to go 4% outside of what they think they're capable of and watch them do it and they come out with a newfound level of confidence that they didn't have before because they went and they did something that they didn't even think they could. Pushing your own mental limits is very fucking valuable because it lets you know that you can do some things you had no idea you can do. I've heard about too many stories of people that were in college and they spent hours and hours and hours studying and still managed to function and keep going, and they never thought they could before, and ended up being able to use that later on, putting it down for projects. I push my kids all the time to do things that they're not comfortable with, and they do it. And the smile
and then you end up with the high rate of suicide that we have in this country. And that's the other issue that I have with that, is that we have other people pushing and shaming other people without an effective measure of where someone else's limits are and are not. Because we have one of the highest rates of suicide based specifically on that philosophy. And there has to be a way to measure when you have a right or not a right, whether someone's your child or not, whether you have a right to actually say, for sure, it's not someone's limit. People are too ready when someone says I can't to say, yes, you can, than to sit here, be patient, offer consideration and understanding. And then people feel isolated and shamed because they are aware of their limit and their limit is not given space. And I'm sorry, that's just, I see it too much on the opposite side.
The trick is to challenge them and to push them.
No, the trick is to let them feel heard
finish
and acknowledge.
Let them make their own decision and not shame them for making a decision that you don't agree with.
Sometimes your emphatic belief in someone's ability to improve creates the shame regardless. And
it could create a whole new reality for them that they never thought existed before.
But the problem is too many people who believe that don't allow for the other experience. They don't hold space and give weight to the idea that it may work some of the time, but it will also potentially cause tremendous damage. They consider those techniques 100% effective. And that's why I battle against them so hard. Because there are people that are constantly believing that a challenge is always positive. Whereas some people only have quit in them and they need to be led and cherished and celebrated and made to feel safe, not feel challenged. And to really know and acknowledge how important it is to measure and be aware how someone responds. To not be so emphatic about that always is the way. I'm not saying it isn't ever the way, but I'm telling you a lot more often than people realize, it creates isolation in others. And it doesn't give them the power that they deserve. Because no one hears them. They feel like no one understands. How many more people say, no one gets it, no one understands? Because whenever someone speaks, all they do is focus on improvement. They don't focus on acknowledging where someone is and letting that person be there. And so I fight that battle for those people that are silenced because of that, because people don't speak up about it. People don't share the fact that other people are so convinced that they feel like there's something wrong with them simply because they honestly acknowledge a challenge and a permanent limit. And so I hear what you're saying, but and this is one of the inherent ways that Jeff and I do disagree, is that what I was talking about earlier. This is the main thing that I really struggle with people on, because I have so many clients that have struggled with suicide and shame and trauma simply because no one said to them, I hear you, I agree with you, you aren't going to be capable of doing that.
Yeah,
And
but
that's
you can
perfectly
do that,
okay.
but you're saying it's all or nothing, and it's not. So, like, you can challenge someone and be by their
No,
side and still hearing them and listening to them,
sometimes the
because
least
people
bit
would
of
never
challenge
change.
triggers that PTSD response. Sometimes the least bit of challenge triggers that PTSD response. I'm sorry, it does. It does. I'm not saying always.
I'm going
but
to
I'm saying-
wholeheartedly agree with you on you need to get on their side. 100%.
Yeah.
I do that with my clients. There's never been a piece of advice that I've ever come across that I've ever listened to in my life. Anytime somebody gives me advice that hasn't taken the time to understand where I am and who I am and what I'm going through, and that the advice, I immediately rebel against it every time without fail. And that is one of the key skills in being a coach and doing the coaching work that I do, is to shut up and listen and really truly understand where the clients are coming from. I'm going to agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And from that place of true understanding, like, this is where my person is, this is where my people are, it creates a level of trust that then creates a level of connectedness that I know for a fact that this person needs to be pushed in this place because they're in their own way.
And it would depend, like, again, if Lee was trying to push me athletically right now, right? Although one of my goals is to work on my physicality, right? And it's something that is in my in 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 in, in my everyday space right now, right? And if Lee was to actually challenge me about it, I would probably tell him to F off, honestly. Because right now there's so many other things I'm dealing with that if
Mhm.
I do that, if I do my workout in the morning or if I don't do the workout in the morning, is probably the least of my worries of that day. And I beat myself up enough about it. And I understand. I beat myself up, right? It's my first thing that I say because it's the first thing I'm supposed to do in the morning is a workout that's 8 minutes long that I should be able to just like jump up and do, right?
Mhm.
For with no worries and no problems. But for whatever reason, I'm not doing that. And for and I know as a coach, as a person, as a human, when I do my morning as designed, things work better in my life all the way through. So it's not about beating that person up because they're not doing it, right? It's saying, hey, what's going in your space? What's in your space? What's going on? What what's there for you? Right? What's there for me right now is that I'm dealing with all kinds of I'm dealing with a lot of things. And this is from my and this isn't all about me, and I bring it to my personal space because I can probably say this in a bunch of different ways, but from my personal space right now, in the moment, right? My mom's in the hospital. I picked her up and carried her into the car, and then had a problem because I was in the RV, and her homeowners association kicked me out of the park. So I've had all kinds of issues and I'm not now I'm an hour and a half away from her. I can't go into the hospital, and she spent 3 days in the emergency room instead of going to the actual into a room, so I can't even get any information, and she's loopy at the time, so I wasn't getting information. My dad, I can go I have a list right now, right? And there's all and I'm working with people, I work with Heather, I work with Mike, I work with people. I have people I can talk to, which is super important, is to have that coach that you can talk to and say, "Hey, this is where I'm at. This is what's going on, and this is what I'm focused on. This is still my goals, right? So this is
Mhm.
what I'm focusing on. Whereas I'm not focusing so much on the physicality issues, right? But if you talk, as Heather knows, the very first thing I do now is I sit there and ground the hell out of myself, right? So I can actually show up and be, you know, I didn't say out loud why I'm so wrapped up right now is because my propane all day has been giving me issues. Like every single part of this propane has been an issue since I woke up this morning. And so I can't get my furnace to work. And I have a little heater and it works, but it's not great. And I really need to be underneath the cover. Um, so there's all kinds of other things that is in that space. But I can ground myself today, right now, and make sure that I can show up here and be and which is a goal of mine, is to be on the show.
I like what you said there, that you want this thing, but you're living in choice. You've chosen to not do that right now because this other thing is priority.
Yeah.
And I wish more people would live that way. Like, no, I chose this thing. This is where I'm going. I'll get to that when the season comes. When the time comes, I'm more than happy to go do this thing. But that's not my right now. My right now is I have to focus on this.
But to be able to choose, you have to be conscious and aware enough as a human to be able to make conscious decisions, to not be a reactive person, to understand some very basic philosophies that most people don't have and don't get. And so, like, when you talk about something like that, again, I acknowledge some people are limited to the point where there are people that can choose and people that can't.
Well,
And
that's why they have us.
Right. That's
Like
the job.
we're all talking about the same type of people, but that's why we all do what we do, is that we help individuals to get past all of this stuff that we sound like we're disagreeing, but we all do the same exact thing. We all take people out of their trauma. I mean, to a degree, not the exact same thing, but our end goal is to help people to heal and become who they are without all the other bullshit. Right. And so that they're so comfortable in themselves that they can set limits. They can say, they can make choices. They can, So at the end of the day, we're all basically have the same goal. We just all go about it in a different way.
Yeah. And it's powerful. And that's why we have different coaches and why you might resonate better with Adam than you would with me. Because I kind of do end up being no nonsense at the end of the day. Like, make a choice. It's a choice. Make the choice. Right.
And I'm like, we don't get to choose. Acknowledge that we are powerless in certain situations and give yourself grace because of your powerlessness.
Oh yeah.
And that's where my gift is, in helping people. I'm a really big believer in the serenity prayer. The serenity to accept the things you can't change, the courage to change the can, but especially more than anything else, the wisdom to know the difference between what you can and can't change. And that's a big one. Is so many people are taught they can change things they can't. And then they shame themselves. They chase. So many people are chasing to heal other people they can't heal. So many of us that start out as healers, we try so hard to change and heal other people that can't be healed all the time.
You can't change anyone else.
No.
They have to change it. And the healing, the energy might come from you. The one thing I've learned in all the energy work that I've studied, all the energy work that I do, all the things that I've unfortunately been like kind of forced to like acknowledge, because I always go kicking and screaming when it comes to energy work. Everything there, it's through me. It's not from me.
Through me, not from me. I agree with that totally.
Yeah.
I love the idea of radical acceptance.
Uh-huh.
This is reality, and I'm going to accept it as it is. And
even as a healer, true healers are not out there to heal people. They're out there to teach people how to heal themselves.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Because I don't heal others. I teach them how to heal themselves and open that up in themselves. So real healers are not, can I lay of hands on people and heal them? I absolutely can. But it's their mind that they have 1000%. They trust in me that I have the ability to do that. And again, that power is within them. So true healers are not out there attempting to heal other people. They are teaching other people how to heal themselves.
And other people cause damage, other people cause healing. We are not isolated beings without impact by our external worlds.
And that's
I
why,
don't disagree with you.
and that's why choice comes into
Yeah, we have free
play.
will, right?
I
All
I
right,
could have
well, we
chose.
are now an
Yes,
hour and 20
we.
minutes into this discussion, and we
Thank
could
you, Heather. I
continue
love you.
to go round and round, but it is my birthday, and I have an amazing dinner that I would like to go make right now.
Have a
I
happy
love hanging out
birthday.
with
It was
you,
really
Jonathan,
nice meeting
but
you.
it's
You as
about
well,
me
Lee.
because it really is about me.
It is. It is all about Heather today, and as such, guys. One last thing I want to do is just go around once real quick. What do you guys have going on this week? How do people get in touch with you?
Living Oracle Wellness across the board. I will be live here in a few hours on TikTok, pulling cards, hanging out for my birthday. So I will be pulling some Oracle cards this evening. So you can find me there, Living Oracle Wellness everywhere. That is how you find me.
Lee?
LeeASmart.com. I've tried to make it as easy as possible for people to hop on my schedule and get an experience with me. I found that, like, as we started to notice just a while ago, we just naturally resonate with certain people. So I always want that first meeting to be 100% free. That just to make sure that we really truly resonate together. So hop on my schedule. First coaching session is 100% free, and then we just see if we can work together from there. So LeeASmart.com.
Yeah, and unfortunately Adam dropped off. It let me grab his real quick. You guys can always get in touch with me at trueawesomelife.com. You guys, all my socials are all there, and I know his, and I can't think of it at the top of my head. The clearest you, the clearest, and then you as you.com is Adam. You know, he's an amazing. Like I know that it might sound like I was beating him up at all. He's such an amazing soul, and because we are friends, we can have those kind of conversations. I completely respect him, and I want you guys to know. You check him
Oh,
out if he resonates with you. Definitely check these guys out. I love each and every one of you. Heather, I will see you in a few. And
all right.
Lee, I love you too. I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks.